She burst through my office door. Security tried to stop her. She pushed past them. "You can't do this to me," she screamed across the conference room. My business partners stared, clients looked up from contracts, everyone frozen. I set down my pen, looked at her calmly. "Actually, Rachel, I can." And I did. "The house, the cars, the credit cards, you cut off everything. I left you with exactly what you brought to our marriage." She slammed divorce papers on the table. "I'm your wife. I have rights." I picked up the annulment decree, held it where she could see it. Not anymore. The marriage was dissolved yesterday. Legally, it never existed. This is about sex, isn't it? You're destroying my life because I wouldn't. No, Rachel. You destroyed your own life when you told me, my body, my choice, you have no right on our honeymoon. I just made sure there were consequences for that choice. Security escorted her out, still screaming, still threatening, still not understanding. But before we continue, please subscribe to this channel, and leave a comment where you are watching from. 18 months ago, I was James Mitchell, 47-year-old owner of Mitchell Construction Services, generating $3.2 million in annual revenue with projects across 3 states. I had built my construction company from nothing. Started with a pickup truck and a toolbox at age 25, worked 18-hour days for 15 years, reinvested every profit back into equipment and crews. By 47, I owned 43 commercial vehicles, employed 62 full-time workers, and held contracts for major commercial developments throughout the Southwest. My personal net worth was approximately $4.8 million. The business was valued at $2.1 million. I owned a 4,200 square foot home in Scottsdale worth $1.3 million, a mountain cabin worth $650,000, and investment portfolios worth $1.4 million. Everything earned through decades of systematic work and careful financial management. At 45, I had never been married. Not because I was against marriage, but because I had been focused on building something substantial before sharing my life with someone. I wanted to be able to provide genuine financial security, not just promises of future success. That's when I met Rachel Summers. Rachel was 38, attractive, intelligent, and working as a marketing coordinator for a luxury hotel chain. She earned $52,000 annually, lived in a rented apartment, drove a leased BMW, and had approximately $8,000 in savings. Not poor, but not wealthy either. Middle-class professional living paycheck to paycheck with some lifestyle inflation. We met at a charity gala where my company was a major sponsor. I was immediately attracted to her sophistication and apparent ambition. She seemed impressed by my success but not overwhelmed by it. She asked thoughtful questions about the construction industry, showed genuine interest in my work, and appeared to value achievement and hard work. We dated for 8 months. Rachel was charming, supportive, and seemed genuinely excited about building a life together. She talked about wanting a stable relationship with someone who shared her values of hard work and mutual respect. She never seemed gold-digging or opportunistic, just a professional woman looking for an equal partnership with someone who had achieved financial stability. During our engagement, Rachel moved into my house. She quit her job, claiming she wanted to focus on wedding planning and then starting a consulting business once we were married. I supported this decision financially, covering all our living expenses while she pursued her entrepreneurial goals. The wedding was elaborate, $85,000 total cost, which I paid entirely. Destination ceremony in Maui, 100 guests, luxury resort, professional photography, open bar, live band. Rachel wanted everything to be perfect, and I was happy to provide that experience for both of us. We had discussed intimacy during our relationship, of course. Normal, healthy conversations about expectations, preferences, and the importance of physical connection in marriage. Rachel had always been affectionate and seemed to view intimacy as a natural, important part of our relationship. She never indicated any reservations about the physical aspects of marriage. If anything, she was more physically affectionate during our engagement than many couples I knew. Hand-holding in public, spontaneous kisses, cuddling while watching movies, regular physical intimacy during our dating period. I had no reason to expect that marriage would change the fundamental dynamic of our relationship. The wedding ceremony was beautiful. Rachel looked stunning, seemed genuinely happy, and gave a heartfelt speech about looking forward to building a life of mutual respect, partnership, and love with me. She talked about how much she admired my work ethic and how excited she was to support each other's dreams and goals as husband and wife. Everyone commented on how happy we looked together, how well-matched we seemed, and how obvious it was that we were deeply in love. I believed it completely. I thought I had found the perfect partner, someone who shared my values, appreciated what I had built, and wanted to create something even better together. The honeymoon was planned for 10 days in Tuscany. Private villa, wine tours, cooking classes, romantic dinners. I had arranged everything to be perfect, the kind of honeymoon that creates lifelong memories and starts a marriage with joy and intimacy. That's when everything changed. Our first night as husband and wife, I approached Rachel romantically. Nothing aggressive or demanding, just the natural physical intimacy you would expect between newlyweds on their honeymoon. I had been looking forward to this moment for months, not just physically but emotionally. The symbolic beginning of our life as a married couple, the deepening of our connection as husband and wife. Rachel pushed me away. Not playfully or teasingly, but with genuine irritation. Not tonight, James. I'm tired from the travel. I was disappointed but understanding. Travel fatigue is real, wedding stress takes time to unwind, and I didn't want to pressure her. I suggested we just hold each other and talk about our beautiful wedding day. Even that level of physical closeness would have been meaningful. I just need space right now, she said, rolling away from me in bed. The second night, I tried again. Gentle, romantic approach. Candlelit dinner, wine, conversation about how happy I was to be her husband. When we got back to the villa, I attempted to initiate physical intimacy. Same response. I'm still adjusting to being married. This is all very overwhelming. By the third night, I was starting to feel confused and rejected. But I tried to be patient and understanding. Maybe Rachel needed more time to feel comfortable with the transition to married life. Maybe she was dealing with stress or expectations I didn't fully understand. The fourth night, I approached the topic directly but sensitively. Rachel, I love you and I want to make sure you're comfortable and happy. But I'm also hoping we can connect physically as husband and wife. Is there something specific that's making you uncomfortable? Her response changed everything. James, just because we're married doesn't mean you're entitled to my body whenever you want. My body, my choice. You have no right to expect anything from me physically. I stared at her, trying to process what I had just heard. This wasn't about timing, comfort, or adjustment stress. This was a fundamental rejection of physical intimacy as a component of our marriage. She was telling me that marriage created no mutual obligations, no reasonable expectations, no shared understanding of what we were building together. Rachel, I'm not trying to be entitled or demanding. I'm trying to connect with my wife. Physical intimacy is a normal part of marriage. Not my marriage. I'll decide when and if I want to be intimate, and you have no say in that decision. If you can't accept that, maybe you shouldn't have gotten married. The coldness in her voice was shocking. This wasn't the woman I had dated for 8 months, who had been affectionate and loving throughout our relationship. This was someone who seemed to view marriage as a business arrangement where she retained complete control while I provided financial support and social status. So what exactly did you think marriage was going to be? I asked. A partnership where we support each other's goals and respect each other's boundaries. I support your business success, you support my lifestyle and security. But that doesn't give you ownership of my body. I'm not talking about ownership. I'm talking about mutual intimacy, physical connection, the normal expression of love between husband and wife. That's your expectation, not mine. And I don't have to meet your expectations just because you put a ring on my finger. The next morning, I tried to discuss the issue calmly. I explained that physical intimacy wasn't just about sex, it was about emotional connection, affection, the bonding that makes marriage different from friendship or business partnership. I told her I felt rejected and confused by the sudden change in our relationship dynamic. Rachel's response was even more dismissive. You're being dramatic, James. Lots of married couples don't have sex frequently. You need to adjust your expectations and focus on the other benefits of marriage. What other benefits? Companionship. Social status. Financial partnership. Someone to share your success with. I realized she was describing a business arrangement, not a marriage. She wanted the financial security, social status, and lifestyle benefits of being married to a successful man, but she didn't want to provide the emotional and physical intimacy that makes marriage a unique relationship. The remaining 6 days of our honeymoon followed the same pattern. Every attempt at physical intimacy was rejected with increasing irritation and condescension. Rachel seemed to view my desire for marital connection as an unreasonable imposition on her autonomy. She acted like I was being selfish and demanding for expecting our marriage to include normal physical affection. By the time we returned home, I understood that Rachel had fundamentally misrepresented what she wanted from marriage. She had presented herself as someone seeking a loving, intimate partnership, but what she actually wanted was financial support and social status without the emotional and physical obligations that come with being someone's wife. But the pattern didn't stop there. It got worse. The first month of our marriage was a systematic education in how little Rachel respected me or our relationship. The intimacy rejection wasn't an isolated incident or adjustment issue, it was her establishing the terms of what she considered our partnership. Every night, I would approach her with normal marital affection. Hand-holding, cuddling while watching television, gentle physical contact while cooking dinner together. Every single approach was rejected with increasing annoyance. I already told you, James. My body, my choice. Stop being clingy. We're married, Rachel. Physical affection is normal between husband and wife. Not in this marriage. I'll be affectionate when I want to be, not when you expect me to be. The rejections became more elaborate and condescending. She would roll her eyes when I reached for her hand. She would physically step away when I tried to put my arm around her while we watched movies. She would turn her head when I tried to give her a simple goodnight kiss. You're being needy, she would say. Confident men don't require constant physical validation. But it wasn't just physical intimacy. Rachel was systematically establishing that she had no obligations to me while I had every obligation to her. She expected me to cover all household expenses, maintain her lifestyle, fund her business ideas, and provide social status, but she didn't believe she owed me companionship, affection, respect, or consideration in return. When I worked late on important projects, she complained that I was prioritizing business over marriage. But when I finished work early to spend time with her, she was often busy with her own activities and annoyed by my availability. I didn't marry you to be entertained, she would say. I have my own life and interests. She started making unilateral decisions about our social life, our household management, and our financial priorities. When I questioned her choices or suggested we discuss major decisions together, she accused me of being controlling and not respecting her independence. I'm not your employee, James. I don't need your permission to live my life. I'm not asking for permission. I'm asking for consultation. We're supposed to be partners. Partnership doesn't mean you get to control my decisions. It means you support my choices. The double standard was obvious. She expected complete autonomy for herself while expecting complete support from me. She wanted all the benefits of marriage, financial security, social status, lifestyle maintenance, without any of the obligations of partnership, companionship, or mutual consideration. 3 weeks into the marriage, I attempted one more serious conversation about our relationship dynamic. Rachel, I feel like we have very different understandings of what marriage means. I thought we were building a life together based on mutual love, respect, and intimate partnership. But you seem to view this as an arrangement where I provide financial support while you maintain complete independence. That's exactly what this is, she replied. I didn't get married to lose my autonomy or become your property. I got married to have a stable partnership with someone successful. But partnership implies mutual obligations and considerations. Right now, I feel like I'm funding your lifestyle while you provide nothing in return. I provide companionship and social partnership. That should be enough for you. Companionship requires actually spending time together and showing affection. Social partnership requires actually participating in social activities as a couple. You're refusing both of those things. I participate when I want to participate. I'm not obligated to be available whenever you want attention. That's when I realized Rachel had married me under completely false pretenses. She had presented herself as someone seeking an intimate, loving marriage, but what she actually wanted was financial security without emotional or physical obligations. She wanted to be supported like a wife while behaving like an independent roommate who owed me nothing. The 4th week of marriage, Rachel escalated her dismissive behavior even further. She started spending entire evenings on her phone, ignoring my attempts at conversation. She would make dinner plans with friends without consulting me or inviting me. She would stay out until late hours without calling or explaining where she was. When I expressed concern about her behavior, she accused me of being possessive and controlling. I don't have to report my activities to you. I'm an adult woman with my own life. You're also my wife. It's reasonable to expect basic courtesy and communication. Wife doesn't mean property. I'll communicate when I have something to communicate. By the end of the first month, I understood that Rachel had no intention of being a wife in any meaningful sense. She wanted the financial benefits and social status of being married to a successful man, but she completely rejected the emotional intimacy, physical affection, mutual consideration, and partnership obligations that make marriage different from any other business arrangement. She had used the dating period to present herself as someone who valued intimacy and partnership, but once she had legal access to my financial security, she revealed her true expectations: complete support with no reciprocal obligations. That's when I made my decision. If Rachel wanted to treat our marriage like a business arrangement with no emotional or physical obligations, then I was going to treat it like a business arrangement too. And in business, when someone fails to deliver what they promised, you terminate the contract and cut your losses. But I wasn't going to be emotional or dramatic about it. I was going to be methodical, professional, and strategic. Rachel thought she had outsmarted me by securing marriage while refusing marital obligations. She was about to learn that she had made a critical miscalculation. The morning after Rachel's final, "my body, my choice" dismissal, I began preparing for the end of our marriage. But I didn't announce my intentions or create drama. I simply started consulting with professionals to understand my legal and financial options. My first call was to Patricia Hendricks, the family law attorney who had handled my prenuptial agreement preparation. Patricia specialized in high-net-worth divorces and asset protection for business owners. She understood the complexities of protecting entrepreneurial wealth from opportunistic spouses. "James, I need you to walk me through exactly what's been happening in your marriage," Patricia said during our confidential consultation. I provided a detailed timeline of Rachel's behavior, the honeymoon rejections, the pattern of dismissive responses, her explicit statement that marriage created no physical or emotional obligations for her, and her expectation that I should provide complete financial support while she maintained complete autonomy. "How long has this been going on?" Patricia asked. "Consistently since our wedding night. 32 days of systematic rejection of normal marital intimacy and partnership." Patricia reviewed the prenuptial agreement we had drafted before the marriage. It was a comprehensive document that protected my premarital assets, business interests, and established clear terms for property division and support obligations in case of divorce. "The good news is that your prenup is bulletproof," Patricia said. "Rachel signed away any claim to your business, your premarital assets, and most of the marital property. The bad news is that she's still legally entitled to some support and property division under standard divorce proceedings. What if we pursued annulment instead of divorce?" Patricia's interest was immediately piqued. "Annulment? On what grounds?" "Fraud in the inducement. Rachel misrepresented her intentions about the fundamental nature of marriage. She presented herself as someone seeking an intimate, loving partnership, but she actually wanted financial support without marital obligations. That's actually a viable argument. If you can prove that she never intended to fulfill the basic obligations of marriage, particularly intimate partnership, and that her misrepresentations were material to your decision to marry her, then the marriage could be declared invalid from the beginning. What would that mean financially? Everything. If the marriage is annulled rather than divorced, then legally it never existed. No property division, no support obligations, no marital rights. She would be entitled to exactly what she brought into the marriage. Which was essentially nothing. Exactly. But James, this is a complex legal strategy. We need to document everything carefully and build a strong case that her behavior constitutes fraud. Over the next 3 months, Patricia and I developed a comprehensive legal strategy. We documented Rachel's pattern of rejecting marital intimacy, her explicit statements about having no obligations to me, and her clear expectation that marriage was a one-way financial arrangement. We also conducted a thorough financial analysis of our marital assets. Since Rachel had contributed nothing to our household finances and had actually been supported entirely by my income, there were no legitimate claims she could make to any property or assets acquired during our brief marriage. Most importantly, we researched legal precedents for annulment based on fraud in the inducement. While uncommon, there were established cases where marriages had been declared invalid because one spouse had fundamentally misrepresented their intentions about the nature of the marital relationship. During this 3-month preparation period, Rachel's behavior continued to deteriorate. She became increasingly dismissive of me, more blatant about her lack of interest in our marriage, and more explicit about her expectations that I should support her lifestyle without expecting anything in return. She started spending money more freely, expensive shopping trips, luxury spa treatments, lavish dinners with friends, all charged to credit cards that I paid. When I questioned these expenses, she reminded me that as her husband, I was obligated to support her lifestyle. "This is what you signed up for when you married me," she would say. "If you can't afford to support a wife, you shouldn't have gotten married." But she refused to participate in normal couple activities. She wouldn't attend business social events with me, wouldn't spend quiet evenings together, wouldn't engage in normal married life activities that require mutual participation and affection. She also became more openly contemptuous of my attempts to salvage our relationship. When I suggested marriage counseling, she laughed. "I don't need counseling. I know exactly what I want from this marriage. You're the one who needs to adjust your expectations." When I suggested romantic weekend trips or activities to rebuild our connection, she responded with annoyance. "I didn't marry you to be your entertainment coordinator. Find something to do with your own time. By month 4 of our marriage, Rachel was essentially living as a single woman who happened to be financially supported by a man she was legally married to. She maintained her own social life, made unilateral decisions about her time and activities, refused physical intimacy completely, and showed contempt for my desire to have an actual marital relationship. But she continued to expect complete financial support, lifestyle maintenance, and social status as my wife. That's when Rachel made her critical error. She filed for divorce. I came home from work on a Thursday evening in month 5 of our marriage to find Rachel sitting at the kitchen table with a smug expression and a manila folder. "James, we need to talk," she said, gesturing for me to sit down. "What's going on?" She slid the folder across the table. "I filed for divorce. These are your copies of the paperwork." I opened the folder and reviewed the documents. Rachel was seeking dissolution of our marriage with full property division, spousal support, and what appeared to be a substantial financial settlement that would give her access to assets far beyond what our prenuptial agreement allowed. "You're filing for divorce?" I asked calmly. "It's obvious that we want different things from marriage. You want some kind of traditional arrangement where I'm available for your physical and emotional needs whenever you want. I want a modern partnership based on mutual respect and independence. So you're ending the marriage?" "I'm ending this version of marriage. My attorney says the prenup can be challenged on several grounds. We can negotiate a fair settlement that gives both of us what we need." I continued reading through the divorce filing. Rachel was claiming that I had been emotionally abusive by expecting physical intimacy. She was alleging that I had created a hostile living environment by pressuring her for affection. She was seeking half of all marital assets, ongoing spousal support, and exclusive use of our house during the divorce proceedings. "Rachel, this filing claims I was emotionally abusive. You're alleging that I created a hostile environment by expecting normal marital intimacy. You did. Your constant pressure for physical attention made me feel uncomfortable and unsafe in my own home. I never pressured you for anything. I asked for normal husband and wife affection and intimacy. That's pressure. And it's going to look very bad in court when my attorney explains how you made me feel objectified and harassed in our marriage." That's when I realized Rachel's complete strategy. She had married me with no intention of being a wife in any meaningful sense. She had planned from the beginning to use false allegations of emotional abuse and harassment to break our prenuptial agreement and claim assets she had no right to. She had spent 5 months systematically rejecting every aspect of normal marital relationship while documenting my responses as evidence of abusive behavior. Every time I had expressed disappointment about her refusal to be intimate, every time I had asked for basic affection, every time I had tried to discuss our relationship problems, she had been building a case that I was emotionally abusive and controlling. But Rachel had made one critical miscalculation. She assumed I would respond emotionally to her divorce filing, perhaps beg her to reconsider or negotiate desperately to save our marriage. She thought she had me trapped between losing her completely or accepting whatever settlement terms she demanded. She was wrong. "So you want to end our marriage?" I asked calmly. "I want to restructure our relationship on terms that work for both of us. And if I don't agree to your settlement demands, then we'll let the court decide. And courts don't look favorably on men who pressure their wives for sex and create hostile living environments." I closed the folder and stood up from the table. "Okay, Rachel. You've made your choice. Now you get to live with the consequences of that choice." "What do you mean?" "You'll find out soon enough." The next morning, I called Patricia Hendricks. "She filed for divorce," I told her. "Perfect," Patricia replied. "That makes our job much easier. She just gave us everything we need to pursue annulment based on fraud in the inducement." "How so?" She's claiming in her divorce filing that your expectation of normal marital intimacy was abusive and unreasonable. That's essentially an admission that she never intended to fulfill basic marital obligations. She's documenting her own fraud. What's our next move? We file a counter-petition for annulment. And we request immediate asset protection orders to prevent her from dissipating marital property while the proceedings are ongoing. How long will this take? 6 to 8 months for full resolution. But James, once we file our counter-petition, Rachel is going to realize that her strategy has backfired completely. She's about to discover what she's actually entitled to under annulment rather than divorce. Which is nothing. Exactly. And unlike divorce, where there's negotiation and settlement possibilities, annulment is all or nothing. Either the marriage was valid and she gets divorce protections, or it was fraudulent and she gets nothing. 2 days later, Patricia filed our counter-petition for annulment. The legal argument was comprehensive and devastating. Rachel had entered into marriage under false pretenses, misrepresenting her intentions about the fundamental nature of marital partnership, and had systematically refused to fulfill basic marital obligations while expecting complete financial support. We included detailed documentation of her behavior, the honeymoon rejections, her explicit statements about having no obligations to me, her refusal to participate in normal marital intimacy and companionship, and her own divorce filing that characterized normal marital expectations as abusive. We also filed for immediate protective orders freezing all joint assets and credit accounts. If Rachel wanted to claim the marriage was valid for purposes of property division, then she would have to defend against annulment. If she wanted to maintain her position that she had no marital obligations, then she would have to accept that the marriage was fraudulent and invalid. She couldn't have it both ways. Rachel received our annulment counter-petition on a Friday afternoon. By Saturday morning, she was calling my phone repeatedly. I didn't answer. By Saturday evening, she was at my house, pounding on the door. I didn't let her in. Instead, I spoke to her through the intercom system. What do you want, Rachel? What is this annulment thing? Your attorney is saying our marriage never existed. That's correct. You claim that expecting normal marital intimacy was abusive. We're arguing that someone who views basic marital expectations as abuse never intended to be married in the first place. That's insane. Of course our marriage existed. Then you'll need to prove that you entered the marriage in good faith and intended to fulfill normal marital obligations. Which will be difficult since you've spent 5 months explicitly stating that you have no obligations to me. James, let me in. We need to talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. You made your position very clear. My body, my choice. You have no right. Remember? That was about sex. Not about the entire marriage being invalid. Actually, it was about your fundamental view of marriage. You stated repeatedly that marriage creates no obligations for you while I'm required to provide complete financial support. That's not marriage, that's fraud. Rachel was silent for several minutes. What does this mean for the divorce? There is no divorce. If the marriage is annulled, then legally it never existed. No property division, no spousal support, no settlement. You get exactly what you brought into the marriage. Which is nothing. That's correct. James, this is crazy. You can't just decide that 5 months of marriage didn't happen. I'm not deciding anything. The court will decide whether you entered our marriage fraudulently. If you did, then legally it never happened. Sunday morning, Rachel retained her own family law attorney. By Monday afternoon, her attorney had called Patricia to discuss settlement negotiations. Her counsel wants to negotiate, Patricia told me. Rachel is apparently just now understanding what annulment means financially. What are they offering? They want to withdraw the divorce petition and restart the marriage with clearer expectations and better communication. I laughed. She wants to take back her divorce filing now that she realizes what she's actually entitled to. Exactly. But James, it's too late for that. Once she filed for divorce claiming that your marital expectations were abusive, she created the evidence we need for fraudulent inducement. She can't unring that bell. Over the next 2 weeks, Rachel's behavior became increasingly desperate. She tried calling me multiple times daily. She sent long text messages claiming she had been misunderstood and that she was willing to work on the physical aspects of our marriage. She showed up at my office building, trying to intercept me in the parking garage. When security prevented her from accessing the building, she waited by my car for 3 hours. James, please. We can fix this. I was just adjusting to married life. I didn't mean that I never wanted to be intimate. I looked at her calmly. Rachel, you spent 5 months systematically rejecting every form of physical and emotional intimacy. You told me repeatedly that you had no obligations to me while I was required to support your lifestyle. You filed for divorce claiming that my expectation of normal marital affection was abusive. I was confused. I was overwhelmed. I didn't understand what marriage meant. You understood perfectly. You wanted financial security without marital obligations. Now you're facing the consequences of that choice. But I'll lose everything. The house, the cars, the credit cards, everything. You'll lose access to my assets, which you were never entitled to anyway. You're not losing anything that was actually yours. James, I'm your wife. I have rights. Not if the marriage was fraudulent from the beginning. Which is what the court is going to determine. Rachel's attorney requested mediation to avoid going to trial. Patricia and I agreed to attend, mainly to make our position clear and give Rachel one final opportunity to understand her situation. The mediation session was held in a conference room downtown. Rachel, her attorney, Patricia, and I sat around a table while a neutral mediator attempted to find common ground. Mrs. Mitchell, the mediator began, can you explain your position regarding the dissolution of your marriage? I filed for divorce because my husband was pressuring me for physical intimacy in ways that made me uncomfortable. I felt like I was being treated as a sexual object rather than a partner. And Mr. Mitchell, can you explain your counter-petition for annulment? My position is that Rachel misrepresented her intentions when she agreed to marry me. She presented herself as someone seeking an intimate, loving marriage, but she actually wanted financial support without any marital obligations. She explicitly told me that marriage created no physical or emotional obligations for her. The mediator looked at both attorneys. What are the key legal issues here? Rachel's attorney spoke first. My client is seeking a standard divorce with property division and spousal support. She's alleging emotional abuse based on unreasonable sexual expectations. Patricia responded. We're seeking annulment based on fraud in the inducement. Mrs. Mitchell entered the marriage with no intention of fulfilling basic marital obligations while expecting complete financial support. Her own divorce filing admits that she views normal marital expectations as abusive, which proves she never intended to be married in any meaningful sense. The mediator turned to Rachel. Mrs. Mitchell, did you intend to have normal physical intimacy with your husband when you married him? Rachel looked trapped. I intended to be intimate when I felt comfortable and ready. And in the 5 months of your marriage, did you ever feel comfortable and ready? I was still adjusting to married life. So in 5 months, you never once felt comfortable enough for physical intimacy with your husband? Rachel's attorney interrupted. Physical intimacy cannot be mandated in marriage. My client has the right to bodily autonomy. Patricia responded immediately. Of course she has bodily autonomy. But if she never intended to share physical intimacy with her husband, then she entered the marriage fraudulently. You can't use bodily autonomy as a shield for fraud. The mediator looked directly at Rachel. Mrs. Mitchell, when you married Mr. Mitchell, did you intend for your marriage to include normal physical and emotional intimacy? Rachel was silent for nearly a minute. I intended to have a marriage based on mutual respect and support. That's not what I asked. Did you intend to have physical intimacy with your husband? I intended to make my own decisions about my body. Which means no, you did not intend to have physical intimacy. I don't think physical intimacy should be required for marriage to be valid. The mediator looked at both attorneys. I think we have our answer. Mrs. Mitchell apparently entered marriage with no intention of physical intimacy while expecting financial support. That does appear to meet the standard for fraudulent inducement. Rachel's attorney requested a private conference with his client. They stepped out of the room for 20 minutes. When they returned, Rachel looked like she had been crying. "What's your final settlement offer?" her attorney asked. Patricia responded without hesitation. "No settlement. We're pursuing full annulment. Mrs. Mitchell gets exactly what she contributed to the marriage." "Which is nothing," I added. "Mr. Mitchell," the mediator said, "are you willing to consider any financial settlement to avoid trial?" "No." Rachel made her choice when she told me that marriage created no obligations for her. She gets to live with the consequences of that choice. Rachel broke down completely. "James, please. I made a mistake. I was scared and confused. I'll be homeless. You'll be exactly where you were before you married me fraudulently." "I didn't marry you fraudulently. I married you because I loved you." "No, Rachel. You married me because you wanted financial security. Love would have included wanting to share physical and emotional intimacy with your husband." The mediation session ended without resolution. Rachel and her attorney left to prepare for trial. Patricia and I left knowing we had already won. The annulment trial was scheduled for 3 months later, but Rachel's resolve cracked long before we reached court. As her attorney reviewed the strength of our case and explained the likelihood of complete annulment, Rachel realized she was facing total financial devastation. 6 weeks before trial, her attorney called Patricia with a settlement proposal. "What are they offering?" I asked Patricia during our phone conversation. "They want to accept annulment in exchange for a $25,000 settlement to help Rachel transition to independent living." "No. James, $25,000 is nothing to you, and it would avoid the time and expense of going to trial." "Patricia, this isn't about money. This is about consequences." Rachel spent 5 months systematically rejecting every aspect of marriage while expecting complete financial support. She filed for divorce claiming I was abusive for wanting normal marital intimacy. She made her bed, now she gets to lie in it. Her attorney says she's willing to admit that the marriage was entered into under false pretenses. Good. Then we don't need to pay her $25,000 to admit what we can prove in court anyway. 2 weeks later, Rachel's attorney made another call. They were willing to accept annulment with no settlement, but they wanted me to agree not to pursue recovery of the money Rachel had spent during our 5-month marriage. "How much money are we talking about?" I asked Patricia. "Approximately $67,000. Shopping, spa treatments, vacations with friends, luxury purchases, all charged to accounts you were paying." She wants me to forgive $67,000 of fraudulent spending? That's what they're requesting. No. If the marriage was fraudulent, then every dollar she spent was obtained through fraud. I want full restitution. 1 week before the scheduled trial, Rachel capitulated completely. Her attorney called Patricia to accept full annulment with no conditions, no settlement, and no restrictions on restitution claims. She's also agreed to vacate your house within 30 days and return all credit cards, keys, and access to joint accounts, Patricia told me. What changed her mind? Reality. Her attorney finally explained that if we go to trial and win annulment, she could face criminal charges for fraud, theft, and obtaining money under false pretenses. She's scared. The final hearing was a formality. Rachel appeared before the judge and admitted that she had entered marriage with no intention of fulfilling normal marital obligations while expecting complete financial support. She acknowledged that this constituted fraud in the inducement and agreed that the marriage should be annulled as if it had never existed. The judge's ruling was swift and comprehensive. The marriage was declared null and void from the date of ceremony. All marital property reverted to its premarital status. Rachel was ordered to vacate my house within 30 days, return all access to my accounts and credit cards, and pay restitution of $67,420 for fraudulent expenditures during the invalid marriage. She was also ordered to pay my legal fees of $23,680. Rachel walked out of that courtroom with exactly what she had brought into our marriage: nothing. No house, no financial support, no spousal rights, no claim to any assets. She was back to her pre-marriage status as a single woman with minimal savings and no income. But I wasn't finished with the consequences yet. 3 days after the annulment was finalized, I received the first desperate phone call from Rachel. "James, please, you have to help me. I can't find an apartment because I don't have steady income and my credit score dropped when you canceled the credit cards. Rachel, you're no longer my responsibility. You're exactly where you chose to be. I never chose to be homeless. You chose to treat marriage as a fraud scheme. Homelessness is a natural consequence of that choice. James, I'm begging you. Just a small loan so I can get an apartment and get back on my feet." "No. A few $1,000s. You spend more than that on business dinners." "The answer is no, Rachel. You made it very clear during our marriage that you owed me nothing and had no obligations to me. Well, now I owe you nothing and have no obligations to you." She called back 6 hours later. "I talked to an attorney about challenging the annulment. He says there might be grounds for appeal. Rachel, you admitted under oath that you defrauded me. You're not going to find an attorney willing to take that case without a substantial retainer. How much money do you have for legal fees?" I don't have money for another attorney." "Then I guess the annulment stands." Over the next 2 months, Rachel called me 17 times. Each call was more desperate than the last. She had moved back in with her sister, taken a job at a retail store earning $11 an hour, and was struggling to cover basic living expenses. "I'm working at Target, James." "Target? Do you know how humiliating that is after being married to someone like you?" "Rachel, there's nothing humiliating about honest work. What was humiliating was marrying someone for money while refusing to be a wife. I made mistakes. I was young and confused. You were 38 years old and you committed fraud. Those weren't mistakes, those were deliberate choices. James, I'm living in my sister's spare bedroom. I can't afford my own apartment. I can't afford a car payment. You're living exactly the life you were living before you married me fraudulently. The only difference is that now you understand what you actually lost by rejecting a real marriage." The most pathetic call came 3 months after the annulment. "James, I've been thinking about everything that happened between us. I realize now that I was wrong about marriage. I was scared of intimacy because of past relationships, but I understand now that physical connection is important for a married couple. Rachel, what's your point? I want to try again. I want to show you that I can be the wife you deserve. We could start over, do it right this time." I was quiet for several seconds, trying to process what I was hearing. Rachel, are you asking me to remarry you? Yes. I know I made mistakes, but I've learned from them. I understand now what marriage means, what you need from a wife. I could make you happy. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. You spent 5 months of our marriage explicitly rejecting physical intimacy and telling me that marriage created no obligations for you. You filed for divorce claiming I was abusive for expecting normal marital affection. You fought the annulment until you realized you were going to lose everything. And now that you're facing the financial consequences of your choices, you want me to believe you've suddenly discovered that intimacy is important. I was confused before. I understand better now. Rachel, you understand your bank balance. That's what you understand. That's not fair. What's not fair is spending 5 months treating marriage as a fraud scheme and then pretending you've changed when you realize what that cost you. James, I loved you. I still love you. No, Rachel. You loved my financial security. You loved the lifestyle I provided. You loved the social status of being married to a successful man. You never loved me, and you certainly never loved being married to me. That's not true. Rachel, you told me on our honeymoon that my expectation of physical intimacy was an unreasonable imposition. You spent our entire marriage rejecting every attempt at normal marital affection. You filed legal papers claiming that wanting to be intimate with my wife was abusive behavior. And now you want me to believe that you've suddenly developed feelings for me? People can change. People can change, but they don't change from complete rejection of intimacy to sudden desire for it just because their financial situation became difficult. Your change is remarkably well-timed with your eviction notice. I'm not asking you to trust me immediately. We could date again, take it slow, build up to marriage when you're comfortable. Rachel, I wouldn't date you if you were the last woman on earth. You've shown me exactly who you are, someone who views relationships as financial opportunities and intimacy as a business transaction. That was the last time Rachel called me directly. But it wasn't the last time I heard from her. 6 months after our annulment, I started receiving calls from people in Rachel's family and social circle. Her sister called first. James, I know you and Rachel had problems, but she's really struggling. She's depressed, she can't afford her medications, and she's talking about moving back in with our parents in Ohio. I'm sorry to hear that she's having difficulties, but they're consequences of her own choices. She made mistakes, but don't you think losing everything was enough punishment? She's learned her lesson. What lesson has she learned? That marriage requires compromise and give and take. Has she learned that defrauding someone has consequences? Has she learned that you can't use marriage as a financial scam? Has she learned that rejecting intimacy while expecting complete support is emotional abuse? James, you're being cruel. She's a human being who made mistakes. She's a human being who committed fraud and is now facing the legal consequences of that fraud. Rachel's mother called 2 weeks later. Mr. Mitchell, I don't know what happened between you and Rachel, but she's my daughter and I love her. She's telling me that you ruined her life over sexual problems in your marriage. Mrs. Summers, Rachel defrauded me. She married me while having no intention of being a wife, and she expected complete financial support while providing nothing in return. The annulment wasn't about sexual problems, it was about fraud. She says you were demanding and controlling. She said that in court too, until she realized it was going to cost her everything. Then she admitted under oath that she had married me fraudulently. Rachel isn't a bad person. She's just young and made some poor choices. Mrs. Summers, Rachel is 39 years old. She's not young, and fraud isn't a poor choice, it's a crime. 3 of Rachel's friends called over the next month. Each conversation followed the same pattern. They acknowledged that Rachel had made mistakes, but argued that I was being vindictive and cruel by not helping her rebuild her life. None of them seemed to understand that Rachel had committed fraud, not just made mistakes. None of them acknowledged that I had been the victim of deliberate deception and manipulation. They all seemed to believe that because I was financially successful, I had some obligation to support Rachel even after she had defrauded me. The most irritating call came from Rachel's former coworker. "James, I know Rachel, and she's not the manipulative person you're making her out to be. She's just someone who was overwhelmed by marriage and made some bad decisions. Did she tell you that she refused all physical intimacy for 5 months while expecting complete financial support? She said you had different expectations about sex. Did she tell you that she explicitly stated that marriage created no obligations for her while I was required to fund her lifestyle? She said there were communication problems. Did she tell you that she filed for divorce claiming I was abusive for wanting normal marital affection?" The caller was quiet for several seconds. I didn't know about all of that. Rachel is very good at presenting herself as a victim while leaving out the parts where she systematically defrauded someone who trusted her. But even if she made mistakes, don't you think she's suffered enough? She's suffered the natural consequences of committing fraud. That's not enough suffering, that's appropriate accountability. What Rachel didn't anticipate was how her fraud would affect her professionally and socially. Phoenix is a large city, but the professional community is relatively small. Word of our annulment and the reasons behind it spread quickly through business and social networks. Rachel discovered that her reputation had been severely damaged. When she applied for jobs in marketing and business development, her areas of expertise, potential employers would conduct background checks and discover the annulment proceedings. The court records were public, including her admission that she had married me fraudulently. No professional services company wanted to hire someone with a documented history of fraud, even if it was in her personal life. Marketing and business development roles require trustworthiness and integrity, qualities that are difficult to demonstrate when you have court records showing you defrauded your husband. Rachel was forced to take retail and service jobs that didn't require extensive background checks. The career she had built over 15 years was essentially over. She went from earning $52,000 annually in marketing to earning $23,000 annually in retail, with no benefits and no career advancement opportunities. Her social consequences were equally severe. Phoenix has an active social scene for young professionals, and Rachel had been part of several networking groups, charity organizations, and social clubs. But once word spread about the annulment and the fraud allegations, she found herself excluded from social events and professional gatherings. People didn't want to be associated with someone who had a reputation for dishonesty and manipulation. Rachel discovered that her social status had been largely dependent on being married to a successful man, and without that connection, she was no longer considered desirable company by the people she had socialized with during our marriage. She also faced ongoing financial consequences that she hadn't anticipated. The restitution order for $67,420 didn't disappear just because she couldn't afford to pay it. I had the right to garnish her wages, place liens on any property she acquired, and pursue collection through legal channels. Rachel's $23,000 annual income meant that wage garnishment took approximately $300 per month from her paychecks. After taxes and garnishment, she was living on less than $1,400 per month, barely enough to cover basic living expenses. She couldn't qualify for apartment rentals because of her damaged credit and low income. She couldn't finance a decent car because of her financial situation. She couldn't afford healthcare, dental care, or other basic services that she had taken for granted when I was supporting her lifestyle. Most importantly, she couldn't rebuild her career because her reputation for fraud and dishonesty followed her wherever she went. Every job application, every networking opportunity, every attempt at professional advancement was complicated by her documented history of deception. Rachel had calculated that she could use marriage to achieve financial security without providing marital partnership in return. What she didn't calculate was that fraud has long-term consequences that extend far beyond the immediate financial impact. While Rachel struggled with the consequences of her fraudulent behavior, my life improved dramatically. The annulment had protected all of my assets and business interests, allowing me to refocus on growing Mitchell Construction Services without the distraction of an unsupportive and manipulative spouse. Within 6 months of the annulment, my business revenue increased by 18%. I was able to concentrate fully on major projects and business development without having to manage the emotional stress of Rachel's rejection and contempt. My work quality improved, my client relationship strengthened, and my professional reputation was enhanced by how I had handled the personal crisis with dignity and legal precision. I also discovered that being single again at 48 was quite different from being single at 47. I had successfully defended myself against fraud and manipulation, demonstrating to potential partners that I was someone who wouldn't tolerate disrespect or deception. This actually made me more attractive to high-quality women who valued strength and integrity. 18 months after the annulment, I met Dr. Sarah Chen, a 42-year-old pediatric surgeon who had built her own successful medical practice. Sarah was financially independent, professionally accomplished, and genuinely interested in building a life with someone who shared her values of hard work, integrity, and mutual respect. Our relationship developed naturally over 8 months. Sarah understood the demands of professional success, appreciated the importance of mutual support in a partnership, and never once suggested that my financial success created any obligations for her or rights for her to my assets. Most importantly, Sarah valued intimacy and partnership as fundamental elements of a romantic relationship. She never treated physical affection as an imposition or emotional connection as an unreasonable expectation. She understood that successful relationships require mutual consideration, shared intimacy, and reciprocal support. We were married 2 years after my annulment from Rachel. Sarah signed a prenuptial agreement without hesitation, understanding that protecting premarital assets was a reasonable precaution for both of us. She brought her own substantial assets to our marriage and wanted the same protection for her medical practice and investments. Our marriage is everything that my relationship with Rachel wasn't: genuine partnership, mutual respect, shared intimacy, reciprocal support, and collaborative decision-making. Sarah and I worked together to build something better than either of us could create alone. My construction business has continued to grow under Sarah's supportive partnership. She provides intelligent advice about business decisions, attends professional social events as my partner, and celebrates my successes while pursuing her own professional goals. We support each other's careers while maintaining our individual achievements and identities. Our combined household income is now approximately $1.2 million annually. We own a beautiful home worth $2.1 million, maintain investment portfolios worth $3.4 million, and are building wealth together through shared financial goals and complementary professional success. Most importantly, we have a marriage based on genuine love, mutual respect, and shared values. Sarah chose to be with me because she loves me and values our partnership, not because she wanted access to my financial security. I chose to be with Sarah because I love her and respect her accomplishments, not because I needed someone to validate my success. We have the kind of marriage I thought I was getting with Rachel: intimate partnership between equals who support each other's goals while building something beautiful together. 3 years after our annulment, Rachel made one last desperate attempt to re-enter my life. She had apparently been tracking my social media and discovered that Sarah and I had gotten married. She also discovered that my business success had continued to grow and that my new marriage represented the financial security she had thrown away through her own choices. Rachel showed up at my office on a Tuesday afternoon, somehow managing to bypass building security. She was waiting in my private office when I returned from a client meeting. "Hello, James." I immediately called building security, but I was curious enough about her desperation to hear what she had to say before having her removed. "How did you get in here, Rachel?" I told security I was your ex-wife and that you were expecting me for a business meeting about outstanding financial matters. We have no outstanding financial matters. You still owe me $67,000 in restitution, but that's being collected through wage garnishment. She looked terrible. 3 years of financial struggle and social isolation had aged her dramatically. She was wearing clothes that appeared to be from discount stores, her hair was poorly maintained, and she had the desperate look of someone who had been beaten down by consequences she hadn't anticipated. James, I need to talk to you about something important. You have 2 minutes before security arrives. I know you married that doctor. Sarah Chen. I looked her up, she's very successful, very accomplished. Your point? My point is that you found someone who gives you what you wanted from marriage. You got your happy ending. You don't need to keep punishing me. I'm not punishing you, Rachel. You're experiencing the natural consequences of defrauding someone who trusted you. It's been 3 years. I've lost everything. My career, my social life, my financial security. Isn't that enough? You haven't lost anything that was actually yours. You lost access to things that belonged to me, which you were never entitled to in the first place. James, I was wrong about marriage. I understand that now. I see how happy you are with Sarah, and I realize what I threw away. What you threw away was the opportunity to be genuinely loved and supported by someone who would have given you everything if you had just been willing to be a real wife. I know that. That's why I'm here. I want to make amends. How exactly do you plan to make amends for 5 months of systematic fraud and manipulation? Rachel opened her purse and pulled out a cashier's check. I have $5,000. It's everything I've been able to save from my job at Target. I want to give it to you as a gesture of good faith, to show you that I understand what I did wrong. I looked at the check. $5,000 represented months of struggle and sacrifice for someone earning Rachel's current income. It was probably everything she had managed to save while living paycheck to paycheck and dealing with wage garnishment. Rachel, you owe me $67,000 in restitution. $5,000 doesn't even cover the interest that's accumulated. I know it's not enough to pay off the debt, but it's a start. It shows that I'm trying to take responsibility. Why are you really here? She was quiet for several seconds, looking down at her hands. I'm here because I made the biggest mistake of my life when I treated you like a financial opportunity instead of a husband. I threw away genuine love and security because I was too proud and too selfish to appreciate what I had. And I want you to know that I understand what I lost. Every day I wake up in my sister's spare bedroom, working a job that barely covers my expenses, watching you build a beautiful life with someone who appreciates you the way I should have. Rachel, understanding what you lost doesn't change what you did. You can't undo fraud by feeling sorry about it later. I'm not asking you to take me back. I know that's impossible. I'm asking you to forgive me. To stop the wage garnishment and let me try to rebuild my life. Why should I do that? Because you won. You have everything you ever wanted, a successful business, a beautiful wife who loves you, financial security, social respect. You don't need my $5,000, and you don't need to keep taking money from my Target paycheck. Security knocked on my office door. I told them to wait outside. Rachel, you're asking me to forgive a debt that represents the money you stole from me during our fraudulent marriage. I'm asking you to show mercy to someone who learned her lesson and is trying to do better. Have you learned your lesson? Yes. I understand that marriage is about partnership, not financial security. I understand that you can't expect someone to support you if you're not willing to support them. I understand that intimacy and affection are important parts of a loving relationship. Do you understand that what you did to me was fraud? She hesitated. I I understand that I misrepresented my intentions. That's not what I asked. Do you understand that what you did was fraud? Another long pause. Yes. I committed fraud. Do you understand that fraud has victims? Yes. Do you understand that I was the victim of your fraud? Yes. Do you understand that victims of fraud deserve restitution? She started crying. Yes, but James, I can't afford to pay you back at this rate. I'll be paying you for the next 15 years. Rachel, that's not my problem. You committed fraud, and fraud has consequences. Haven't I suffered enough? I stood up and walked around my desk to face her directly. Rachel, you haven't suffered at all. You've experienced consequences. Suffering is what you put me through for 5 months when you rejected every attempt at intimacy while expecting complete financial support. Suffering is having someone you love treat you like a financial opportunity rather than a husband. Suffering is realizing that your wife views marriage as a business transaction where she gets everything and gives nothing. I know I hurt you. You didn't hurt me. You defrauded me. And now you're facing the legal consequences of that fraud. James, please. I'm begging you. $5,000 is everything I have. Keep your money, Rachel. Use it to rebuild your life honestly this time. What about the wage garnishment? The wage garnishment continues until you've paid restitution for the money you stole from me. That's how the law works. She stood up, looking defeated. So there's nothing I can do to make this right? You can accept responsibility for what you did instead of trying to negotiate your way out of the consequences. I am accepting responsibility. That's why I'm here. No, Rachel. You're here because you want me to reduce the consequences you're facing. That's not accepting responsibility, that's trying to manage the damage. She walked toward my office door, then turned back. James, I want you to know that I really did love you. I was just too scared and selfish to show it properly. No, Rachel. You loved what I could provide for you. You never loved me. How can you say that? Because love includes wanting to make the other person happy. You spent 5 months systematically making me miserable while expecting me to fund your lifestyle. That's not love, that's exploitation. She left without another word. Security escorted her out of the building and instructed the front desk not to admit her again. That was the last time I saw Rachel in person. Today, 5 years after my annulment from Rachel, I'm living the life I had always envisioned for myself. My construction business generates over $4.2 million in annual revenue. Sarah and I have a beautiful marriage built on genuine love, mutual respect, and shared goals. We're building wealth together, supporting each other's professional success, and creating the kind of partnership I had hoped to find when I got married the first time. Rachel, as far as I know, is still working in retail and still making payments on the restitution order. She'll be paying me approximately $300 per month for the next 8 years, assuming she maintains steady employment and doesn't declare bankruptcy. I occasionally receive updates through mutual acquaintances. Rachel apparently tells people that I destroyed her life over sexual incompatibility in our marriage. She claims that I was vindictive and cruel for pursuing annulment instead of divorce. These explanations conveniently omit the fraud she committed, the 5 months of systematic deception, her explicit statements that marriage created no obligations for her, and her attempts to claim assets she had no right to through false allegations of abuse. Rachel continues to present herself as a victim of my unreasonable expectations rather than accepting responsibility for the deliberate fraud she committed against someone who had offered her genuine love and partnership. But her version of events doesn't change the legal reality of what happened. She married me under false pretenses, systematically refused marital obligations while expecting complete financial support, and then tried to use false allegations to claim assets she wasn't entitled to. The court found her behavior to be fraudulent, and she's facing the appropriate legal consequences. People sometimes ask me if I feel guilty about Rachel's current situation. If I think the consequences she's facing are too severe for someone who was just confused about marriage. My answer is simple: Rachel wasn't confused about marriage. She understood perfectly what she was doing. She wanted the financial benefits and social status of being married to a successful man without providing the emotional intimacy, physical affection, and genuine partnership that make marriage different from any other business arrangement. She calculated that she could use marriage as a financial scam, presenting herself as a loving partner to secure legal access to my assets, then rejecting all marital obligations while expecting complete support. Her calculation was wrong. Marriage isn't a financial scam, and fraud has consequences. I don't feel guilty about those consequences because I didn't create them. Rachel created them through her own deliberate choices. She chose to marry me fraudulently. She chose to reject intimacy while expecting support. She chose to file for divorce with false allegations when I refused to accept her terms. Every consequence she's facing flows directly from her own decisions. The real tragedy of Rachel's situation is that she had every opportunity for genuine happiness and security. I would have loved her completely, supported her goals, shared my success with her, and built a beautiful life together, if she had just been willing to be a real wife. Instead, she chose to treat me as a financial opportunity rather than a partner. She chose manipulation over love, exploitation over intimacy, and fraud over genuine relationship. Those choices have consequences, and Rachel is living with those consequences now. Meanwhile, I found genuine love and partnership with someone who values intimacy, respects commitment, and understands that marriage requires mutual consideration and reciprocal support. Sarah and I have everything that Rachel and I could have had, if Rachel had been capable of genuine love and partnership. The lesson from my experience with Rachel is clear: marriage is about partnership, not exploitation. Physical intimacy and emotional connection aren't unreasonable expectations, they're fundamental requirements for a successful marriage. And people who try to use marriage as a financial scam will face appropriate consequences when their fraud is discovered. Rachel made her choice when she told me, "My body, my choice, you have no right," on our honeymoon. She chose financial exploitation over marital partnership. I made my choice when I decided that fraud has consequences and that no one is entitled to financial support while refusing marital obligations. The game is over, and everyone got exactly what they chose. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to this channel and leave a comment where you are watching from.